I see Miami as a team that has one asset that they're actually trying to decide if they're willing to give up or not. It's down to 3 teams for Kevin Durant, according to Shams Charania, and a deal is getting close. Welcome into a trending edition mini pod here on PHNX Suns. I'm Erik Ruby, per usual, and it's time to play some chicken in the Kevin Durant trade saga that we've been continuing to cover here on PHNX for what feels like about 6 months now, but we might be getting closer to a resolution. Shams Charania jumped on the Pat McAfee show earlier this morning and said it's down to the Rockets, the Timberwolves, and the Heat, and it feels like a big game of chicken right now. All 3 of those teams are just 1 or 2 pieces away from going through on a trade for Kevin Durant, and as we inch closer to the finish line, it is exciting to see what exactly does happen in the end, or if there's a dark horse that comes in there and makes a last-second bid for KD that blows the Suns away, whether it is the Toronto Raptors, who have been weirdly linked to the Suns this entire time, or if the San Antonio Spurs decide to maybe put together a package that's worth offering, considering that The Athletic reported that Kevin Durant's preferred destination is not one of the 3 teams I mentioned that were close to making a deal, but in fact, San Antonio. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on audio, 5-star reviews go a long way for the show. Nobody's bringing you KD coverage like we are here at PHNX. Let's take it team by team. 1 or 2 pieces away for the Houston Rockets. What exactly could those 1 or 2 pieces be? We know that a deal is likely structured around Jalen Green. Whether Suns fans, including myself, want that or not, Jalen Green, salary-wise, feels like it makes the most sense, even if he gets rerouted to another team. So what could the Rockets be holding out on? There's a couple of different ways that you could look at it. It could be some of the future Suns picks in 2027 and 2029. Maybe they don't want to give up the future draft capital if they're comfortable giving up Jabari Smith Jr., the 10th pick, and Jalen Green, and primarily for a package for Kevin Durant. And maybe the Suns say that's not enough. We want to control some of our own draft capital going forward, and we want to make sure that we have our own 27 or 29 pick. On the player side of things, maybe they are hesitant to throw in a Jabari Smith Jr. and a Tari Eason. Hell, maybe they're hesitant to throw in just a Jabari Smith Jr. alone. I think that's something that the reporting caught me a little off guard about, the Rockets being hesitant to part with Jabari and Tari collectively and individually, and I understand they are a big part of Ime Udoka, who's fresh off of now being one of the highest paid coaches in the NBA in a contract extension, and I get that those are players that were integral to the defensive scheme and the identity of the Rockets. That being said, we're talking about Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason here for a guy in Kevin Durant who was in the MVP conversation at the beginning of last season, and I know things didn't go the way they were supposed to, but he was still individually elite, and I just don't understand why a team like Houston that struggled to score 100 points in the playoffs doesn't want to replace a Jabari Smith Jr. or a Tari Eason with Kevin Durant, especially when you're getting rid of what I believe to be a negative asset in Jalen Green. That being said, I think those are probably the biggest hangups for the Rockets, and at the end of the day, maybe it's the 10th pick. Maybe they just don't want to include the 10th pick to the Suns, and they're willing to give up Jabari, Tari, and the future 27 and 29 pick, but 10 this year is off the board because they want to target a Kaman Malawak or a Carter Bryant or an Igor Demon. Sorry, I want to call him Igor Demon so bad. Okay, so that's Houston. What are the 1 or 2 pieces for Houston? That's what kind of makes sense for them. What about the Timberwolves? What could be the 1 or 2 pieces that they are away? Maybe it is their lack of overall draft capital. Maybe they don't want to send the 17th pick in this year's draft. Maybe they don't want to part with a Rob Dillingham or a Terrence Shannon Jr. Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, and Mike Conley makes the money work. Do they not want to part with a player in Rob Dillingham that they traded up with the Spurs to get in the top 10 last year, who obviously didn't play a lot in his rookie campaign for a team that reached the Western Conference Finals? Or do they want to hold on to Terrence Shannon Jr., who at some points had better flashes than Rob Dillingham this year also as a rookie, but is a little bit on the older side, I believe in his mid-20s coming out of college, 24, 25. So for Minnesota, I feel like the 1 or 2 pieces away doesn't make as much sense to me. Maybe the piece isn't an asset, but more on Kevin Durant's side. Him being willing to go to Minnesota, as it's been widely reported that he's not that interested, despite the fact that Anthony Edwards does play in Minnesota, and those two seem to have a good relationship. And honestly, it's a team that could use KD and maybe not give up too much for him if they want to replace Julius Randle with KD or Rudy Gobert, who is integral to their defensive system. Maybe they don't want to part with him either. And the Suns want a big center like they've been mentioning with Jordan Ott and Brian Gregory since they've taken over. Minnesota, I feel like, is probably the closest to actually offering the package the Suns want, but does Minnesota want KD? If KD doesn't want Minnesota, that kind of feels like the roadblock there. What about the Miami Heat? Feels like a big name here to watch is, of course, Kel'el Ware. We've been talking about Kel'el Ware as one of the best individual assets, maybe the best individual asset the Suns could get back for Kevin Durant. Draft capital, especially future draft capital, of course, has the enticing prospect of being better than Kel'el Ware, but Ware made a late Rookie of the Year push last year, was on when he was on, but of course the overall stats, the overall numbers, not the most eye-popping, not the most impressive, but you look at a 7'1", 7'2" guy that can shoot from anywhere on the court. He has some awareness issues on defense, and playing next to Bam Adebayo definitely helped him out with that, but still has all the elite tools and prospects to be a great starting center in this league, and somebody the Suns would be sorely in need of, whether they keep KD or they don't. That kind of feels like that big hinging piece for the Miami Heat. Could it be anybody else? Maybe a reluctance to part with Jovic and Jaime Jaquez along with the other Kel'el Ware, which is the other young prospect in Kel'el Ware. Obviously, I think they're fine parting with Andrew Wiggins, Duncan Robinson, Terry Rozier. The 20th pick in this year's draft doesn't feel like a sticking point when it comes to a team like Miami that's so interested in KD. And we all know that KD has had interest in Miami before, whether it was before he got traded to Phoenix or, even at the trade deadline, Miami did make an offer for him, including Jimmy Butler and a 3-team deal with the Warriors that, of course, Kevin Durant shot down because he didn't want to move in the middle of the season. Miami feels like the perfect balance of having the assets that the Suns would want if they are willing to include Kel'el Ware, and being a destination that Kevin Durant would want to go to, with the nice middle ground of being willing to part with their assets. We talk about Miami. I see Miami as a team that has one asset that they're actually trying to decide if they're willing to give up or not. For Houston, I see the 10th pick. Are they willing to give up that? I see Jabari and Tari. Are they willing to give up one or both of those? Some people put together a package without either wing, which I don't think the Suns should consider. Maybe the Rockets are hinging on the 27 and the 29 pick, right? Minnesota, it feels like a better balance of, hey, we're willing to really part with anything that you need. It's just more, is Kevin Durant willing to part with his desires to extend in a place that's warm and has no income tax? Because Minnesota doesn't check either of those boxes. And that's kind of the final part here, which is multiple teams are interested in Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's main destination, the San Antonio Spurs, are not on that list of these final teams. The Spurs are not getting Kevin Durant because they want Kevin Durant or because Kevin Durant wants them. The Spurs will get Kevin Durant if they offer the best trade package, and if they are not willing to part with the requisite assets, whether that's 2, whether that's Castle, whether it's 14 and Vassell, whatever it is, if they're not able to up their offer compared to what everybody else is offering, especially those 3 finalist teams that Shams mentioned on the Pat McAfee show, you ain't getting KD. It's not happening. This is not a situation where somebody who's won a championship can dictate where he went and it's all thank you for the memories. This is, we are on the precipice of disaster for the next 5 years for the Phoenix Suns. And what we get in a return for you, Kevin Durant, is going to either mitigate that disaster or amplify it. And that is where the Phoenix Suns find themselves. And that's where PHNX Suns finds themselves, covering this saga from start to finish. Of course, live shows at 3 o'clock every single day right here on PHNX Sports. And of course, right here in your audio feed. Like, subscribe, make sure you check out the channel, check out the other interviews we've done, whether it's been J.E. Skeets with No Dunks or Nekias Duncan, of course, talking about the Miami Heat. We have a ton of stuff for you to dive into as Kevin Durant is waiting to be traded and Suns fans are waiting for that notification to hit their phone. Make sure you tune in at PHNX_Suns on Twitter and on Instagram. We'll keep you up to date as all the latest rumors fly, and of course, when the actual news goes down. I'm Erik, and I'll be talking to you again soon.
We all silly like the mayor.